Bradzilla persisted in her demand for a $3,500 wedding gown and relentlessly ridiculed me on her special day. In a quest for revenge, I, a 27-year-old woman, took on the role of maid of honor for my sister-in-law, Christina, who was 25. My marriage to her brother, Martin, 28, had just reached its one-year milestone, and while the rest of Martin's family had welcomed me, Christina stood apart. Despite my initial efforts to be friendly, Christina's uptight and unkind attitude reminded me of the mean girls from my high school and college days. Realizing that trying to befriend her was pointless, I stopped my attempts, and we settled into a routine of mutual indifference. Martin, worried about the tension between us, tried to encourage a friendship, but Christina's lack of interest led him to give up. The rest of the family, uninterested in forcing a bond, allowed us to figure it out on our own. Given her history, I was taken aback when Christina invited me to be her maid of honor a few months ago. Initially, I was less than thrilled and said I needed time to think it over before planning to decline. Christina and I hardly knew each other, and she had made her disdain for me very clear. Plus, the role of maid of honor felt like a significant commitment that I wasn't ready to make for someone like her. Despite my inclination to turn her down, I discussed it with Martin before reaching a final decision. He suggested that being Christina's maid of honor could be a chance for us to bond and possibly improve our relationship. Although skeptical, I was swayed by Martin's reasoning and reluctantly agreed, thinking that maybe Christina's invitation was a small step toward friendship. The choice was made after much contemplation. I decided to give it a shot, only to regret it a few weeks later. At first, she exhibited an unexpectedly pleasant attitude, a refreshing change from her usual chilly demeanor towards me. We enjoyed our time planning and going out for brunch together. However, things took a turn when she requested that I buy her wedding dress, a gorgeous but pricey $3,500 gown. Despite her mother's generous offer to let her wear a stunning dress from her own wedding, perfectly altered for Christina, my sister-in-law was insistent on the extravagant dress that far exceeded her budget. She explained that her salary wasn't enough to cover the cost, yet she was determined to have that particular gown. Feeling desperate, she turned to me for financial help, knowing my earnings were higher than hers. She couldn't approach her parents or fiancé for funding, each having their own valid reasons for not covering the expense. Since I was her maid of honor and viewed as the wealthy relative, she found it easier to ask me. While I did earn more than most of her family members as an investment banker, we still weren't blood relatives. Cornered, I attempted to offer excuses, but her persistent pleas wore me down. Finally, I conceded to buy the dress on the condition that she would repay me in full afterward. Fortunately, I had documented the entire conversation in text messages, where she confirmed her promise to reimburse me. With this proof, I could hold her accountable. I bought the dress, and she was overjoyed. Her kindness toward me even surpassed how she treated her close friends who were bridesmaids. It felt rewarding for a few months, until the wedding day arrived, when she reverted to her cruel ways in a particularly painful manner. On the day of the ceremony, she not only resumed her icy demeanor but took it further by publicly mocking and humiliating me in front of her friends and other guests. Although the ceremony went smoothly due to limited interaction, she began to distance herself from me early on. During the event, she begrudgingly included me in socializing but used the chance to make cruel jokes at my expense, leaving both the guests and me feeling uneasy. Her unkindness knew no limits as she ridiculed everything from my looks to my personality, making hurtful comments about my weight, nose, social anxiety, and even my perfectionism. I was baffled by her baseless and senseless behavior, especially given the positive rapport we had built leading up to her wedding. I had almost convinced myself we were friends. Unable to tolerate the humiliation any longer, I confronted her privately, questioning her sudden shift in attitude. She dismissed my concerns, claiming I felt overly sensitive, and Christina insisted she wasn't mocking me, it was simply her way of joking. Frustrated, I voiced my discomfort with her so-called humor, but she dismissed my feelings, suggesting that if I couldn't handle it, I shouldn't be her friend. I stood there, stunned by her insensitivity, and eventually lost my temper, leading me to take an impulsive step. Positioned near the stage as the band prepared, I decided to seize the moment. I walked up onto the stage, where the microphones were still unused, and delivered an impromptu speech, something I would come to regret. I started by sharing how Christina had invited me to be her maid of honor a few months prior. My husband and I had naively hoped it would be a chance to bond with her. I mentioned Christina's initial coldness, and how I had hoped this role could pave the way for a real friendship. However, it quickly became clear that, despite her temporary kindness, Christina was simply unapproachable. I recalled the moment she pleaded with me to buy her a wedding dress and suggested that she had only asked me to be her maid of honor to secure the expensive gown. Knowing my financial situation was more stable, it seemed like she had put on an act for a few months just to get what she wanted. As I continued my speech, I realized the microphone's power had been cut, so I began shouting my words. Security started pushing through the crowd toward me. Seizing the opportunity, I showcased the incriminating texts on my phone, branding Christina as tacky, ungrateful, and, fittingly, Bradzilla. Without looking back, I exited the venue, savoring the sound of her sobs behind me. On the bus ride home, I checked my phone and found around 100 messages from my family, including puzzled texts from my parents who had witnessed the scene. Martin, my husband, expressed disbelief and mentioned we needed to have a serious talk. He added that Christina had been inconsolable after my exit, temporarily halting the wedding festivities. Once I got home, I ignored the flood of messages from distant relatives seeking gossip and drama. Instead, I poured myself a cocktail and ordered a burger, compensating for the wedding feast I had missed. Wanting a relaxed afternoon, I settled in front of the television to unwind, choosing to remain unresponsive to calls and texts until evening, feeling no need to engage with anyone in my agitated state. I was overwhelmed by a mix of emotions: insult, humiliation, and a sense of being manipulated. While I recognized that my actions were erratic, I struggled with conflicting feelings and couldn't find the courage to explain myself to anyone. The only people I felt warranted an explanation were my parents, Martin, and my in-laws, excluding Christina, who was well aware of the situation. Martin returned home around 9 o'clock, and the atmosphere was tense. He entered without a word, leaving me bracing for a conversation. After he freshened up, an hour passed with no sign of him approaching, so I decided to break the silence. Despite his cold demeanor and distraction with his phone, I walked into the bedroom where he lay, drawing inspiration from my unfiltered speech at the wedding. I began to explain that Christina had insulted me throughout the morning. I recounted how I had given her the chance to apologize or reassure me that the mockery wouldn't continue for the sake of her guests' laughter. Expressing my discomfort with the humiliation, I was met with Christina dismissing my concerns, insisting that I was making a fuss over nothing. This infuriated me, especially since I had willingly bought her the dress, expecting at least some gratitude. Instead, she treated my feelings as if I were overreacting, which only fueled my anger. Unable to contain my frustration any longer, I revealed this information to her guests, mirroring her behavior but with the advantage of having a microphone. I had hoped that my explanation would suffice for Martin, but he remained silent, continuing to ignore me. Once more, I lost my cool and insisted that Martin talk to me, finally meeting my gaze. He acknowledged my feelings of humiliation but firmly stated that it didn't justify ruining Christina's wedding day. He highlighted the broader implications for his family's reputation and urged me to think about the repercussions of my impulsive actions. He believed my behavior was unacceptable, asserting that regardless of Christina's actions, my response was worse. Martin argued that I had better options to handle the situation but had chosen an unhinged path for petty revenge. He conveyed that until I offered an apology, particularly to Christina and his family, our relationship couldn't return to its previous state. I found it absurd that he wanted me to apologize to Christina, as he shifted the blame onto her for starting the conflict. This led to a heated argument where I firmly stated that I would only apologize to Martin and his parents, asserting that Christina was the real culprit. For a few days, we remained at an impasse, enveloped in silence. As I reflected on the situation, I began to wrestle with the idea that I might not be entirely justified in my actions. Although I stood my ground against apologizing to Christina, I started to see Martin's perspective about approaching the situation more sensibly. My anger clouded my judgment, and I felt confused about how to deal with the fallout from my impulsive speech at my sister-in-law's wedding, which ended with her in tears. Update 1. Many of you have asked if Christina reached out to me after the wedding. To clarify, she has not, nor have my in-laws. I want to emphasize that I don't understand the source of Christina's animosity toward me. Contrary to what some believe, we hadn't met prior to my relationship with Martin, so there's no backstory to explain her intense dislike. I also want to make it clear that I hope no one judges Martin and my in-laws based solely on this incident. They are genuinely kind people who have always treated me well. Despite the current rough patch, they've been supportive, especially Martin, who is defending his family. I haven't decided whether his response is right or wrong, but he isn't being cruel. This disagreement won't tear us apart, so please don't suggest divorce. Thank you. Update 2. It's been a tough week since the wedding. Martin and I didn't speak for the entire week, but today I felt it was time to confront the situation. I acknowledged my mistake and apologized to Martin during dinner for my behavior at the wedding, recognizing how significant the family event was that I disrupted. I expressed my intention to reach out to his parents and make amends, understanding they didn't deserve the aftermath of the incident. However, I maintained that I wouldn't apologize to Christina because of her unpleasant attitude. Martin paused for a moment but reassured me that I didn't have to apologize to her. He was just upset the other day. He acknowledged that his earlier stance was reasonable, but his tone carried a sense of weariness. Martin shared the difficult time he had faced dealing with the backlash from nearly everyone in the family. Although he wished to confide in me, I had been unavailable, making for a miserable week for him as well. He revealed that his parents were furious with me and advised me against rushing to apologize to them because of their current anger. He vented his frustration about uncles, aunts, and other relatives who had been making disparaging remarks about me in the family group chat for no apparent reason. Martin mentioned he had distanced himself from the group, yet his parents continued to send hurtful messages, highlighting the family's negative attitude toward me. To my surprise, he advised me not to apologize to Christina, acknowledging that her actions had instigated my reaction. While I was willing to apologize to the family, he insisted that I didn't owe anyone an apology. According to Martin, they were selfish, and the incident had exposed their self-centeredness. He recounted his futile efforts to reason with his parents and other family members, insisting that Christina had played a key role in igniting the conflict, but they refused to listen, dismissing my viewpoint and branding me as unreasonable. Martin understood that any apology from me would likely lead to further humiliation, and he was determined to prevent that while still maintaining that my actions weren't right. He held firm to the belief that Christina wasn't as blameless as she seemed and advised against apologizing to anyone, stressing that I shouldn't apologize to his parents even for my own peace of mind. I concluded that it would be more beneficial to address the issue when they were more open to hearing my side. Approaching them now would probably be futile. In a way, this outcome turned out to be advantageous for both of us. While the situation wasn't perfect, at least I could ease my conscience with Martin. Ultimately, what matters most to me is my husband's opinion. Everyone else can be disregarded. Update 3. Hey everyone, I know many of you have been eager for an update, but honestly, not much has changed since the last one. After reconciling with Martin, I stopped concerning myself with his family's opinion of me. Martin received a promotion at work, and we decided to take a vacation to unwind. As for my own parents, I explained the situation to them, and they were understanding. They're just happy that Martin and I are getting along. Christina and her parents have not reached out, and I believe that's for the best. My in-laws chose to side with their daughter, and I respect their decision without holding it against them. Update 4. It's been a month since my last update, and today I received a refund from Christina. It caught me off guard since I had nearly forgotten about her and the wedding incident. She texted me to reveal the actual reason for her dislike. It turned out to be as trivial as I expected. Her friend had developed a crush on Martin, and when he introduced me to the family, her friend felt heartbroken. Christina blamed me for it. I don't see how this is my fault, but Christina needed an excuse to dislike me, and she chose that one. Now that I know the reason, which seems rather silly, I wish I hadn't known it at all. I shared this information with Martin, who mentioned he always had a hunch but never saw her friend as anything more than his little sister's best friend. Even if I hadn't been in the picture, they wouldn't have ended up together anyway. It's all in the past now, and I don't have to deal with Christina ever again. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again in the next video, so stay stunned.